From the Mayflower Puritans to the modern televangelists, religion has always managed to find its place at the center of American life. Less than a generation after the Revolution, when the Founding Fathers decreed the separation of church and state, religion began to take new turns in the Republic. In the backwoods of Vermont and western New York, religious ferment and experimentation would reach its peak, producing some of the most curious legends and institutions of the new country, and defining the very nature of faith in America to come. Charles Finney, the father of religious revivalism and the leader of the Second Great Awakening, was so struck by the zeal and peculiarity he found here that he would later comment, "I found that region of the country what, in the Western phrase, would be called a burnt district." For the first half of the 19th century, Western New York was a place, as one critic described it, where farmers became theologians, offbeat village youths became bishops, and odd girls became prophets. As a phenomenon, it would be known as part of the Second Great Awakening. As a society, it was the frontier of a rapidly expanding nation. As a religious experience, it became known as the Burned-Over District.
It is extraordinary how much primal exuberance of religious imagination, how much I would call pure genius is manifested in the Burned-Over District in the 30s and 40s of the 19th century. The most remarkable single figure is, of course, Joseph Smith, the Mormon prophet, seer, and revelator. But there are a whole series of colorful and fascinating personages who sort of thronged the region for about 25 years.
Of the many prophets and visionaries who would come and go in this era, the Burned-Over District would produce four remarkable individuals whose visions and inspirations would outlast time and setting and form the distinctiveness of American faith to this day. Mother Ann Lee, an illiterate cotton spinner from Manchester, England, would arrive in Albany with a group of her followers. In 1776, the same year that America declared its independence from Britain, Mother Lee and her followers declared their independence from the outside world and became a legend. Known originally as the Shaking Quakers, the Shakers quickly began to grow, building communities from Maine to Kentucky. Though their numbers would only reach 6,000 at its height, the Shakers would leave a remarkable legacy from their distinctive architecture and furniture, their religious practices, which included curious forms of communal dancing, to their thousands of household and industrial inventions, to their painting and music. Simple Gifts, one of America's most celebrate tunes, was a Shaker hymn. Mother Lee was the first woman to establish an enduring religious community on this continent. The Shakers would become a model for many other religious and social communalists to come, though none of these would have the longevity or the acclaim. William Miller, a veteran of the War of 1812, sat down at his desk one day in his home on the New York-Vermont border and began making calculations based on prophecies recorded in the Bible. He predicted the world would end, not once, but twice, causing mass hysteria on both occasions. A respected farmer in the community, Miller was not an overly zealous preacher nor a charismatic individual. Yet, in the years before his predictions were to be realized, he traveled the country giving thousands of lectures, often at his own expense. He converted tens, if not hundreds of thousands, to his theories. On October 22, 1844, the night of his second and supposedly more accurate prediction, Many gathered in places such as this, now known as Ascension Rock, near the Miller home, to await the second coming of Christ.
There's so much, as frequently happens in history, that everything is blown up afterwards. The disappointment was not blown up. That could not have been more acute. But there were stories that grew out. They said that the people, the fact is, they even said that William Miller was sitting on top of the roof of his house so that he would be handier to see Jesus. He was not. He spent the whole day, he and Joshua Heim, in the house, studying their Bible and praying. Yes, quite a few of the family went up to what we now call the Ascension Rock. But if you were expecting your Jesus to come, wouldn't you want to go to the highest place where you could see from horizon to horizon?
Followers of Miller would continue to make predictions of the end of the world, even to the present day. His most lasting influence will be the Church of the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses, which were formed by many of his followers. John Humphrey Noyes, a graduate of the Yale Divinity School, believed that he was perfect. For this belief, he was soon ostracized from his mainline church, but quickly formed his own following, which he called perfectionism. After troubles in Vermont, he moved his colony to Oneida, New York. Along with establishing the most successful religious community in American history, and a silverware company, which is now the largest producer of flatware in the world, he and his followers performed one of the strangest and most controversial sexual experiments in American history. Joseph Smith, a farmer from upstate New York, claims to discover an ancient manuscript written on gold plates, which tells of the early inhabitants of America. Translated, it becomes the Book of Mormon, the foundation of one of the fastest-growing faiths in the world today, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons.
Well, of course, Joseph Smith was very concerned as a young boy. They would go, this was the Burnover District. There was religious fervor like seldom before in our country. It was during the Second Great Awakening, ushered in by ministers like Charles Grandison Finney and others. And Joseph Smith was very concerned which church is true. They all claimed to be true, yet they all taught different things and contradicted each other. And so that's why he went into the sacred grove to pray and wanted to know which church is true.
The Book of Mormon tells of Jesus Christ's coming to America, with many vivid accounts of prophets and battles, mysteries and adventures. But it's Joseph Smith, the modern prophet, perhaps the most extraordinary figure in American religious history, who creates America's single most significant contribution to world faith.
There is a kind of primal exuberance in Smith that fascinates me. There are not many figures out of the history of religion. You know, if one could enter a time machine and get back to them and have a chance to sit and talk to them, there are not many people I would actually want to go and talk to, but I would love to meet Joseph Smith and talk to him. I think it would be a very enlightening and fascinating human experience.
As Ken Burns, creator of the documentary series The Civil War, and Thomas Jefferson remarked, we began to suspect that the real life and identity of America lies in its unique and at times maddeningly independent search for God and personal salvation, and not in its wars and generals and presidents. The experiences of the burned-over district taught us how we, as Americans, would begin to approach God, and what forms spirituality would take in many of our daily lives. It is here, through religious revivals, through community and social experimentation, and through applying biblical scripture to the events of our own time, that we began to understand what the newly discovered concept of freedom means for faith and community. The burned over district, like America's first revolution, continues to define us and inspire us.